Mark,
Yes,
pulpit on, please.
got it. Okay, and should be good to go.
Select the window back, yeah. So, can you hear me now? Yeah. All right, thank you for being here. If you have a hard time seeing, some of these pictures may not be easy to see from where you're at, so there are some seats up here in the front that we could sit at. Thank you. All right, well, thank you for being here. Between June 17th and June 28th, in conjunction with Flathead Lutheran Bible Camp and through Elias Tours, we went on a trip. There were 25 of us, I think, right, that went on a trip to the journeys of Paul in the Greek islands. And of those 25, we have, I think, 7 of them here today, right?
Yes.
I counted that. Myself, Pastor Carol, your name again? Cindy Picorni. We, 17. Yeah, 17. Okay, 17. Patsy Morton, Margie Fiedler, and Jim and Mary Lake were with us also. So we made some new friends in Jim and Mary. So that was part of the trip that was really wonderful, I think. And on our trip, it was, like I said, it was 11 days here. Day one, not a whole lot of action there. And if anybody has any questions, just ask, and I'll do my best to answer them. First day was departure day, right? It was an overnight trip. We all gathered in Chicago, except for our cat. He didn't go, or she didn't go. She wanted to. Yeah, and we had a short layover in Munich, and we flew to Thessaloniki, Greece, the next day. And what happened there? Oh, and that was the beginning of our Footsteps of Paul trip. All right. Now I've got these. If you want these pictures of Paul's trips, conformingtojesus.com. That's where I got them. Let me see where we're at here. All right. This is a picture showing all 4 of Paul's journeys in the book of Acts of the apostles. You noticed on his first journey, Paul only went to the eastern part of Turkey in Cyprus, right? He didn't go into present-day Europe. I mean, Paul's trip. And that's in Acts 13 and 14. When you get into Acts 15 through 18, you see Paul's second trip, where I don't know if you can see this, probably not. No. You can see where up in where it says Asia and Troas, when he crossed over from Troas to Samothrace, over to Neapolis and Philippi up there. See if we can zoom in on that. That's where Paul finally went into Macedonia, into modern-day Europe. It's the first time. And some of the places we went on this trip that you see are Philippi, which is up in Macedonia, upper left. It says Thessalonica, they call it Thessaloniki. Berea, down to Athens. We went to Corinth. We also went to Ephesus. All those were places that Paul went on this trip that we went. And I'll talk about some other places on the next map. On Paul's third journey, he retraced a lot of what he did on the second journey. He had planted these churches along the way, and he went back to visit them. And that's in Acts 19 through 21. In his fourth journey, of course, he went all the way to Rome, where he was imprisoned for a couple years before he was executed. All right. Yeah. So back to this, places we went also on this map are down south of Asia, Rhodes, that's part of Greece. We went to Patmos. We went to Santorini. Not shown on here are the islands of Mykonos. The island of Crete, for some reason, isn't labeled. Oh, it's down at the bottom where that green blob is there. So those are the places that we went. Any questions so far? And that's my presentation. No, it's not. All right. So day 2, we got to Thessaloniki. A couple things we saw in Thessaloniki. We didn't see a lot. We were all very tired and cranky at this point in time. What's that?
Speak for yourself.
Oh, you weren't cranky and tired?
No.
All right, I have pictures. We saw the White Tower. Now, the White Tower is a symbol of Thessaloniki. There's a history behind it. It's used to be called the Blood Tower at one point in time. The history of Greece is quite fascinating. This area has been ruled by the Greeks, the Romans, the Ottomans, and the Visigoths, and several other people. So these buildings and lands changed hands many times. And a lot of what we saw, there were just layers of history all over the place. Right? But the White Tower is the symbol. You'll see the Greek flag atop of it. Okay, let's see anything else on this. It was used by the Ottomans as a fortress, a garrison, and a prison. And remember, the Ottomans were probably in 15th century and so up until the 20th century, when Greece got their country back for a short time. All right, there were pictures. There's our tired and cranky travelers.
Notice the smiles.
Yes, there are smiles. And these are 4 of our, Pastor Wendy McAlpine and Kim Block, who is our synod, was her vice president. Vice president of our synod was with us also. I got a lot of the pictures you'll see here from Kim's Facebook page because she posted very well and I did not. We didn't do a whole lot more that night. We settled into our hotel and had our meal and tried to relax and get some sleep. And there's one of the street vendors that we passed by. And day 3, we started in Thessaloniki and we trekked all the way to Philippi, and that was, a couple of hours drive away, hour and a half or 2.
That was a trek.
That was the trek. We did not walk this road. This road here is actually a Roman road that the Romans built. And that's how people got back and forth from Philippi to Thessaloniki, all the way to Jerusalem even, right? That's how they got through. And this is a stop along the way we made and took a picture of this Roman road. You'll notice the stones and everything on it. All right, when we got to Philippi, this is hard to see. This is the area that we saw, and just to kind of point out, number 1 there is an amphitheater where we went to. Number 6 is the Agora. Number 2 there is, I believe that's where the...
What's the Agora?
Agora? Agora, what is the Agora?
The marketplace.
Well, it's more than just a marketplace. It's like the public square.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever heard of agoraphobia? That's fear of open spaces. So it's an open space. And agoras are important in Greece in the Roman days because if you went to make a speech or to talk to people like Paul did, he would often go to the agoras.
And that's where he got himself in trouble all the time.
Yeah,
And thrown in jail.
yeah, absolutely. There's some, and we'll see some pictures of some of these things. There's several basilicas, ruins of basilicas there. This is what, when they got to the area of Philippi, before it was excavated, or this is a rendition, artist rendition of what they saw at that time. Today, it looks like that. This is one of the newer basilicas, okay? So it's more modern construction than a lot of the rest of it. A little bit about Philippi. It was a flourishing city in Macedonia. It had continuous habitation with the Romans and early Christians from the mid-4th century up into the 14th century AD. And it had been invaded by several people and occupied. And it was eventually evacuated or abandoned, as it were. One of the things about this area is it's very highly earthquake prone. And a lot of these buildings are no longer standing because of earthquakes. So they fall apart. We made our way, saw an amphitheater. This is a little bit smaller amphitheater than they had, and we'll see a bigger one later. And our guide, at some point in time, mark where we at with the mouse. There you go. We sat and listened to our guide speak, sitting at the amphitheater. I don't know what else to say on that. The Agora, like I said, this is the area called the Agora. It looks like you're not looking at a lot here, but this would have been surrounded with shops, like the public squares that we see in our modern day. You have stores surrounding them. So all the vendors would come here. It is the marketplace, sort of, but it's also really a public square. And that's right where you would go to talk. This is one of the basilicas that we looked at, and there's a kind of a little map of it and what it might have looked like back in the day. The reason I point this one out is because this one was originally built about 500 CE, it's 500 AD, you know, so it's new.
Define a basilica.
The church.
It's a church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just another name. In the southwest corner of the atrium, when they were doing, they found a cistern. And that is a place by tradition that was identified as a prison that Paul stayed in. The prison of Paul and Silas. You remember the story about Paul and Silas singing hymns in prison?
During the earthquake.
During an earthquake. Yes. And all the doors were opened, and the guard was about to kill himself. And they said, wait, stop. No one, we're all still here. And then that very night,
They smuggled them out.
they smuggled him out, yeah. Another thing, this is the digs that were, I guess, tradition has it that Paul was in prison with Silas. We don't have any proof of that, that's what tradition is. I thought I saw, yeah. Okay, this is the Octagon. The Octagon is a church that was dedicated to Paul, that was built well after he was, let's see, is there a date? It was dedicated in around the year 313 to 343, somewhere around that. And they know that because of a inscription in the floor. The floor of the Octagon is covered in mosaics, and they look like they're very dirty, and they are. From different angles, you'll see the intricacy of the patterns, the geometrics and everything, very nice. Our guide threw a little water on the floor to kind of show us how the floor would have looked a lot brighter than we see it today. So it would have really wowed you, I think. So. Yeah, every little stone had to be laid and you had to have everything in a pattern. Yeah. Another feature we saw while we were there is this is one of the old Roman roads. When you get into town, it's not the little stones anymore, but these big slabs of marble that they walked on. But you'll also notice there's ruts there. And that's where the wheels of the wagons and the chariots and such would have been riding in. Okay. Anybody have any questions yet?
How did you guys travel around by bus?
Oh, very good question. I should have mentioned that. We did not walk the roads. We were all in a bus. Our 25 of us, our guide, Artemis, and our driver, right? You'll see Artemis was the lady who was speaking in that one photo. So this is part of the Roman road. When I got into the cities, you have a little fancier road. And like I said, the ruts there. As far as the other feature in Philippi, probably the one that most people, or a lot of people liked, was, if you know that Paul, when he first went to Philippi, he went to the synagogue, didn't get much action there, so he went to where he knew people would be praying, near the river. And this is the river near Philippi, and this would be where he met Lydia. Okay, and from Acts 16:13, on the Sabbath day we went outside the gate by the river, where we supposed there was a place of prayer. And we sat down and spoke to the women who had gathered there. A certain woman named Lydia, a worshiper of God, was listening to us. She was from the city of Thyatira and a dealer in purple cloth. The Lord opened her heart to listen eagerly to what was said by Paul. When she and her household were baptized, she urged us, saying, "If you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come and stay at my home." And she prevailed upon us. So, to commemorate Lydia, they have built this baptistry, diverted some of the stream and constructed this baptistry at that location. And there's a small altar to Lydia there. And some of our group got into the water, including Miss Margie. And kind of remember your baptism, you know, where one of the more significant baptisms in our book of Acts was at.
How hot was it?
This day was hot.
It's 90.
It was in the 90s. Not the hottest day.
Humid?
Nah, not really humid, but hot, yes. So it was a welcome cool down.
This was before Margie's suitcase showed up.
I was going to say.
Yeah,
I never see Margie the same.
Margie,
Margie the same clothes for 5 days, so.
Margie's suitcase has not arrived yet. I'll let you know when it arrives. Everybody else got their suitcase, so she was washing her clothes every night.
Not the baptistry, no.
Oh, yeah. Also here they have a small church that's more modern, but it's interesting. You'll see these two mosaics. One, let me get this up here. The one on the right is Lydia, and the one on the left is the Apostle Paul with this little guy up there talking, right? And from Acts 16, they went to the region, they were in Turkey at the time, and they, being Paul and the gang, they went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. When they had come upon Mysia, they attempted to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit did not allow them so. Passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. There stood a man from Macedonia pleading with him and saying, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." When he had seen this vision, we went immediately, tried to cross over to Macedonia, being convinced that God had called upon us to proclaim the good news to them. So this is the mosaic of the man from Macedonia pleading with Paul to come into Macedonia. So when you go into this church, on the floor there's a mosaic of Paul's second journey, kind of commemorating that. And like a lot of, these churches, most of them you'll see here are
Very ornate.
very ornate. They're,
A lot of gold.
yeah, there is a lot of gold.
Icons.
Orthodox churches. These are Greek Orthodox churches. And if you look up at the ceiling, you'll see all these paintings. And these things commemorate biblical stories. They help people remember those stories. You know, not everybody was literate, especially back in these days of Paul, when a lot of these Greek Orthodox churches were built. So this is a way you hear the story, you see the picture, you can remember the story. As you enter into the chapel, there is a baptismal font and an altar at the far end with a picture of Paul and of Lydia, stained glass. Above that, mosaic, Virgin Mary with a young child. That'd be Jesus, by the way. And up at the ceiling, you'll see what he looked like when he grew up. No, the ceiling of most of your Orthodox churches, if you look straight up, you'll see some sort of rendition, either the head of Jesus or some picture of Jesus there. So, very traditional. Okay, let me see where I'm at here. I want to see what's coming up. Oh. And around the outside, there's more of these stories, biblical stories painted everywhere. And we saw this in every Orthodox church we went into. So we went into other Orthodox churches, so I'm not going to show you too many more of these types of pictures. We would be here forever. So what did we do next? Oh, then we went back to Thessalonica, or Thessaloniki, and saw the Basilica of Saint Demetrius. And Saint Demetrius is the patron saint of Thessaloniki. And this is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this church was first constructed in the early 4th century, replaced a Roman bath. It was repeatedly gutted by fires. This is now a 5-aisled basilica. It was built between 629 and 634. It's undergone some exterior work and such, but the basic construction of the basilica is the same. By 5 aisles, it means there would be 4 rows of columns inside. So there's a big center aisle, outer aisle, and then smaller outer aisles on that. And this is what...
Was Lydia recognized as a saint in the Greek Orthodox Church?
I don't remember them telling us that, but she is in high regard since they do have the baptistry of Lydia.
Right, let me see. Often you can tell by these pictures. I think yes, because on her mosaic they have a little halo around her head. That would indicate to me that she would be regarded as a saint, but I'm no expert in Orthodox customs. All right, so this is inside the Basilica of St. Demetrius. You can see some of the same artistry that we saw in the previous church. And I believe our guide,
This is her.
this is her church. This is, why can't I remember her name? Artemis. Yeah, I can remember Artemis. This is her church here. And one of the things that I discovered, the traditions of the Orthodox Church, and these are the remains of Saint Demetrius. In order to have a church of Saint Demetrius, you have to have his remains there. Very different. We'll see some more remains later. The traditions are much different than ours. And we have different denominations with different traditions. But what I did note is when she talked about her faith, the product of her faith was the product that you would like to see of faith, and that is to bear fruit.
That was what?
To bear fruit, right? That should be the product of our faith, and it's the product of their faith. So who am I to poke fun or make fun or judge what their traditions are? Right? And at the front of the church, there's always this wall, these icons on the wall. They call them icons. Behind there is an area where only the priest can go. And priests in the Orthodox Church can be married if they were married when they were ordained. That's what she said.
So you see the wood rafters
Yeah,
there.
that's the ceiling.
So that's pretty unusual for a basilica, isn't it? Or was it in the midst of?
No, that's
restoration?
the roof.
Okay.
They reconstructed that though.
Yeah, they've had a few fires and everything, but it's how the original roof would have been, out of wood. I think even a lot of the Notre Dame will have wood ceiling. That's why it burns so easily. All right. But there's a pattern to these pictures on the wall, these icons. There's always the patron saint's going to have one. Jesus is going to be in a certain spot, and I don't know what the pattern is, but that's just, if you go into any Greek Orthodox church, and if you know what you're looking at, you can figure out who's where. So, and that was day 3. It was a long day, actually, a long, hot day. Then we went to, on day 4, we left the Thessaloniki, and we stopped first in Berea, or Veria, one or the other, same place. You'll hear this word in our Acts 17:10. That very night, now, Paul and Silas, the Jewish people had set a crowd after Paul and Silas to create trouble and get them in trouble. So there was a large uproar in Thessaloniki. They were hunting for Paul and Silas at the time. So that very night, this is out of Acts, the brothers and sisters sent Paul and Silas off to Berea. And when they arrived, they went to the Jewish synagogue. These Jews were more receptive than those in Thessalonica, for they welcomed the message very eagerly and examined the scriptures every day to see whether these things were so. Many of them therefore believed, including not a few Greek women and men of high standing. But when the Jews of Thessalonica learned of the word of God had been proclaimed by Paul in Berea as well, they came there too, to stir up and incite the crowds. So that is a little, I didn't remember that that little story, just those few verses, but it kind of talks of the time. And this is a monument to commemorate Paul's visit to Berea. It's more modern, but it does tell the story a little of Paul preaching to the people of Berea and them studying and remembering the word. And also they have a picture of the man from Macedonia, again, telling Paul to come into that area because they were thankful that Paul came and they could hear him speak. And this is a statue of Paul. Notice that these pictures and these mosaics and stuff, that they don't look so realistic. Some things are exaggerated or elongated. And these are done on purpose. They didn't try to make them look realistic. But you knew who you were looking at by the face. Oh, this is Paul. I know Paul. It's kind of like, you know who Mickey Mouse is, right? Doesn't look like a real mouse, but you know it's Mickey Mouse. I'm not saying these are cartoons, but you get the gist. They call them icons because they represent that person. They're not actually a physical, literal representation of them. But Paul apparently had a beard and not too much hair on the top of his head. So.
Was he fairly tall, or is that just the statue?
That's the statue. I don't know how tall he was. And that was the beginning of our day on day 4, and we ended up in a town in an area called Matera. Looks like Meteora, it's pronounced Matera. And this is south of Macedonia. Now we're in Thessaly, in the center of Greece, in the upper part. And there are these rocks, these huge rocks that just rise up out of the plain, a bunch of them. And 600 years ago, Byzantine monks chose to worship God and build their cave-like monastic community up in these rocks in Matera. Eventually, 24 monasteries were established atop the giant natural pillars and the hill-like rounded boulders that dominated the area, mainly from the second half of the 14th century. Today, only 6 of these monasteries remain, and 2 of them are run by nuns, the other by monks. And this is not my picture. This is a picture I grabbed off Wikipedia, showing some of the monasteries and the rocks that go up. All right. And here's a picture from below of one of the monasteries. You can see where it's just built right into the rock. This is one of them inhabited by monks. We did not visit this one. Here's one of the rocks. You can see in the side of the rock here, there are some little niches, little caves. That's where some of these monks would go up and just stay by themselves and live a monastic life up in these little caves. Originally, these monasteries built up on the rocks. There weren't any bridges or trails going up. They pulled up everything by rope and pulleys and whatever to build these places. So they didn't fly in anything, you know, or bring donkeys. It was all pulled up by hand. So that's Matera. Another picture of a monastery atop of a hill. I'm not sure which ones are which. I should have checked. We did visit one of the monasteries in Matera. It had started to rain, and this one opened at 1:30 in the afternoon, and we did not enter the monastery dry. But it was beautiful. This little courtyard inside was nice. It was nice to stay a little dry at that time, to stand underneath that. I didn't get a lot of pictures of this particular one, but you'll see that a lot of the ornate pictures, and I did take one photo here, I think. Yeah, that's this one here. and it speaks of the judgment. The beast with the fire, and people sliding right down into the mouth of the beast. And then above you have the Lamb seated with people around him. So kind of something out of Revelation. But enough to scare you into believing, I guess. And as we left, this is another one of the monasteries. Apparently this one is famous because it was in a James Bond movie. What's that? No. Do you remember which one? I don't. Anyway, they had helicopters flying around it and such, but it was still raining at this time, or just it had eased up. Enough where I could get this picture, kind of a panoramic view. You can't really see it, but you can see the monastery over on the left. There's a couple more over on the right and in the middle. There's actually, if you look closely at the picture, up to 4 of them in there, but you can see the clouds and such. You notice on the first picture I showed, it showed blue sky. And it was literally nice blue sky when we got there. And by the time we left, we were all a little wet. And that was Matera. That was the end of day 4. And we stayed overnight in Kalambaka, a town not too far away. And then on day 5, we traveled to Delphi. Anybody heard of Delphi before?
The Oracle.
The Oracle at Delphi. We'll talk about that. And Delphi is this is a model of it. At the bottom is where you enter, walk up the hill, and up at the top would be the temple to Apollo. And there was a priestess there who was the Oracle. All right, and the Oracle we'll talk about in a second. Well, I'll talk about it right now. It was a sacred precinct, the major oracle who was consulted by important decisions throughout the ancient classical world. The ancient Greeks considered the center of the world to be Delphi, marked by a stone monument known as the Omphalos of Delphi, or the navel of the world, the belly button of the world, essentially. Pythia was a title of the high priestess of the temple of Apollo, and she served as its oracle, was known as, like I said. So cities and states would come here for advice on important decisions. And it may take several months to get in, unless you paid a little money, gave a gift, you can get to the head of the line. That's just the way it worked there. Not all this is standing, by the way. Very little of it is standing, as you'll see in the pictures that I have. This is the belly button, the Omphalos, and it's believed to have stood across, atop this column to the right, this artist rendition, the column of the dancers. And they had this egg. The legend, the myth is here that Zeus wanted to find the center of the universe. So he released 2 eagles, and wherever they met was the center of the universe. And it was in Delphi. And this is the Agora at Delphi, first place you get to. And then you walk up that hill. That's the Temple of Apollo, but you can see that there's hills and mountains in Greece. And I think that struck me the first time I went to Greece, is the number of mountains that are there. There are just a lot of them. Of course, we all know about Mount Olympus, but that's just that's the tallest, but there's a lot of them. All right, how are we doing here? So I mentioned that one of these, you give these gifts and you get to the head of the line, and they would erect these treasuries to commemorate and store the gifts this is the Athenian treasury. It's been reconstructed to show what it would have looked like. This Athenian treasury was built to commemorate their battle of the Athenians at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. So there was also, all along the pathway, there were these treasuries and statues and everything else that would have been there. And when you get to the top, there was a temple of Apollo. Doesn't look like much, right? But this is a picture of what they think the temple of Apollo would look like based on details. So it's quite large and substantial. That's the word I get. So it went from that to that. Okay. All right. That was Delphi. Any questions on Delphi? We also went through the museum. I didn't include any of the pictures. There was a lot of neat stuff in the museum. That's where the Thalos was. But for the interest of time, I omitted that. So on the end of day 5, we arrived in Athens at our hotel. This is a view from our hotel. This is Mount Lycabettus. This is the on top is Holy Church of St. George. We did not visit that, but I thought it looked neat. And the other thing you can see, this is thanks to Mary for this picture. She woke up early and took a picture from our hotel of the Acropolis, which we visited the next day. So it is. It was nice. They light up the whole place. So we got to the Acropolis. The Acropolis is kind of the holy religious place where they built the temples. Being Athenians, who do you think the god or goddess was? Athena. Okay. Right. So good answer. So the big one at the top is the Parthenon. Down at the bottom, you'll see these kind of arched walls. That's where the amphitheater would be. Some of this stuff was built by the Romans well after Paul was there. And there's some other buildings, entrance to the Acropolis, and we'll see another building over there. But the main building is the Parthenon that people know. And that is from above, as we walked up the hill to get there, because it was a bit of a hike, is the amphitheater from above. And the walls, they still do performances here. Still do performances in this ancient theater. And then we had to ascend up into the entrance to the Acropolis, and you can see that there are a lot of people in line. It was very crowded. And when we got to the top, before we got to the top, there was this small temple of Athena Nike. I was supposed to tell you something. Oh, no, never mind. Okay. Boom. Next thing we see is the Parthenon. The Parthenon is a Doric temple constructed around, construction started in 447 BC, completed around 438 BC. So think about it, less than 9 years to build this temple that, let me see, I got dimensions here somewhere. I had dimensions here somewhere, so.
You're doing great.
About 228 by 101 feet long and wide, and up to 45 feet high. All made of marble. The columns are segmented, put upon each other, then these lintels are put up top. I can go into construction of this. I find it fascinating. Right now, you'll see all the scaffolding. They are doing reconstruction work on the Parthenon right now. That's from the side. And if you go around back, never mind my finger up there on the left, but that's around the back side of the part and inside the temple, a big statue, a giant statue of Athena would have stood there. This was not the first temple to Athena on the Acropolis. This is what they consider. There was an older temple underneath this, and then over the side an even older one that's no longer there, the old temple. And over on that side there's this area called the Pandrosion. I don't know how it's said, and we'll talk about that here. It was a sanctuary dedicated to Pandrosos, was founded north of the old temple of Athena in the Archaic period. Pandrosos, the kind and obedient daughter of the legendary king of Athena, Cecrops, was the first priestess of Athena. Polias, the patron goddess of the city. It was founded in the area of the Acropolis. The myth is that this area, Athena, and who was she fighting against, trying to get this? What's his name? Wait a second.
I imagine that Paul had a lot of competition when he was trying to preach to the Greek with all these foreign gods
Well,
that they'd grown up with.
we'll talk about that. That's a good question. Oh, I'm sorry. Poseidon. Okay, that's the one. Athena and Poseidon had a battle for Athens, this area, and Athena won. Because I guess Poseidon, I guess the myth is that olive trees don't grow with salt water, something related to that. But inside the Pandrosion, there was an olive tree that was encased in there to commemorate that battle and victory. And you'll see this little area here with these unique columns. And over on the other side, there were a lot of people. And that's, yeah, more ruins. Okay. As we exited the Acropolis, from the top you can see the Areopagus Hill. Okay? It's a rock with a bunch of people standing on it. Why do I talk about this? From Acts 17. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was deeply distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he argued in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and also the marketplace every day about those who happened to be there. Also some Epicurean and Stoic philosophers debated with him. Some said, "What does this pretentious babbler want to say?" Others said, "He seems to be a proclaimer of foreign divinities," because he was talking about the good news of Jesus and the resurrection. So they took him and brought him to the Areopagus and asked him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? It sounds to us rather strange, so we would like to know what it means." Now all the Athenians and foreigners living there would spend their time in nothing but telling or hearing something new. And Paul stood in front of the Areopagus and said to the Athenians, "I see how extremely spiritual you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription, 'To an unknown God.'" Now, they didn't want to miss out or miss any gods that they might have been, because they thought, it was very important to recognize and observe all these gods, and they didn't want to forget one. So he noticed that. And so he says, "What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you." And then he went on to tell them about God, about Jesus. I don't want to But if you're interested in that, that's the answer to your question. Paul used that to say, hey, this is the unknown God. This is the only one you need, really, right? Not everybody believed him, but this is Raphael's rendition of Paul preaching it to them. The steps going up, if you wanted to go up there, you get up there and there's a bunch of people standing on a rock. And I was one of them, so. Not much level ground up there. But he was not up there, he was in front of it, right? If you notice the words. That was the end. Oh, on day 6, then we had the afternoon to ourselves, and I didn't take any pictures of that. We went shopping, had some food, went back and relaxed. We only had 2 afternoons off the whole trip. Day 7, we all got aboard the Celestial Discovery and departed for Mykonos in the evening. And we had dinner. Some of us had dinner. 3 of us had dinner in Mykonos. The rest took a little tour. We missed out on that. So I didn't get any pictures from that. And I didn't get pictures. What I like about Mykonos is there's all these a maze of alleyways. Now the unfortunate part is, you'll also see your really rich foo-foo shops in these little shops in these alleyways. So you have to have it's where a lot of elite and rich people go. So, but we stayed on the beach. Pastor and I, and then Samantha from Helena had dinner with us, and the advice of our guide. We had a new guide. By the way, I'm going to back up here. The other thing that happened on day 5, the end of day 5, when we got to Athens, is Margie got her luggage. And she was happy. I forgot to mention that. But day 7, we got aboard the ship, went to Mykonos, and stayed overnight. Actually, overnight, we traveled then to Turkey, a new country. And we went to the port of Kuşadası. And I've also often wondered how to say that word, and that's what our guide said, Kuşadası. And that is just a port city, a modern city, but it is where you go when you want to go to Ephesus. And Ephesus is one of the places Paul went to. Actually, it's believed that John's gospel was written in Ephesus by that worshiping community also.
It's where Stephen got stoned.
No, he didn't.
I thought
That was Jerusalem. I'll bet you a beer on that one.
Okay.
All right. But as you enter into Ephesus, this is where you see there's a small amphitheater here, okay? And then as you go down, the first you see this colonnade, this long colonnade, which would be a long street. And on the shops, there'd be houses and shops along the sides here. One of the books that was brought is Ephesus. I think that Patsy brought that one. Shows kind of overlays of what it looks like today and what it would have looked like back in the day by artist renditions.
So this to that. Oh, that's cool.
All right, so if you want to pass that around, people want to look at it, that's fine. I bought that book too, and I should have brought it with me, and I didn't. Well, but that's a neat book, kind of. So we saw a lot of things there. This end of town we entered into would be where the elites lived. And you would, and some more pictures. You see the marble roads, pathways everywhere, just inscription, medicus, as it were, would signify? What do you think it signifies?
Medical? Doctors.
Doctors, okay. Some more pictures. I don't have descriptions of everything on here. What about this? Who do you think this is? Oh, you see a little,
Oh, Nike.
yeah, you see it right here, like a little swoosh mark down their dress? It's said that that's where Nike got their little symbol from. Okay. That's, I don't believe everything I'm told, but it could be. That is the goddess Nike. There you go. Little swoosh. All right. And there are more of the roads, and as you go, you're going downhill the whole way. So, more shops, just details and carvings and columns and capitals and just all over the place. More, this is, let's see, where are we at here? Okay. My brother, when I showed him this, he found this rather interesting. What do you see here on the? Oh, but what's on top of the ball? It looks like a claw on top of there to me, but I don't know. But it's neat. This street had a mosaic in the road, you know. Actually, this is out in front of the shop, so yeah, we couldn't walk on this part. They don't want us to damage it. This is the Temple of Hadrian. You ever heard of Hadrian? Hadrian's Wall? Anybody that's been to, is it Scotland?
Well, England, Scotland.
England, Scotland. That was, the Romans
To
built,
keep the Scottish
yeah,
out of England.
yeah, what she said. The Romans, Hadrian's Wall was built all the way across, and Hadrian was the emperor. Was he the general or something, or I don't know.
I think it's the general.
Yeah, built the wall, and this is a temple of Hadrian, so important person. By this time, we're all tired, so we took a trip to the public facilities. Now underneath, this is, I didn't count the number of seats here, but underneath you'll notice there's a trench. And as they would do their business, it would drop into there, there was running water, it would wash it away. Now at the foot, there's a little small trench that with water, and that's where you could wash your hands. There would be a stick with a sponge on it to wipe, no toilet paper, the stick with the sponge, and then you put it back for the next person to use. But, you know, this is a long time ago, and this is how the Romans, how advanced they were. They didn't have flush toilets. The toilet paper wasn't invented till, I was looking at something on TV, it was back in the late 1800s. So toilet paper hasn't been around that long. So what are you going to do? It beats a pine cone, yes. One of the more famous sites in Ephesus, towards the end of this when you hit the bottom of the road, is the Library of Celsus. Paul would not have seen this, but the Library of Celsus was the third largest library in the ancient world, built 117 to 135 CE, and lasted a whole 130 years before it was shooken apart by earthquake.
we were walking through here. And Greece and Macedonia, and Turkey cannot afford to do all this restoration. And so they will look to England or Great Britain, the United States, our universities that are doing renovations in these countries. They provide the money and the people, or at least a number of the people, but anything they find belongs to the actual country. But that's how a lot of this is being rebuilt.
Yeah, the archaeological digs are, like you said, and it's, a lot of Ephesus has been dug up. As you'll see later in Corinth, not much. And I'll show you a little bit on that later. So the Library of Celsus was destroyed. Part of it was reconstructed to what you see today back, and I don't have the date on that. And as you leave out through there, you go into, we didn't get into the big amphitheater. It would have seated, I don't know, several thousand people. The whole city could fit in there. Later, the Romans built the buildings in front of it, because that was their style. The Greeks didn't have that. We didn't get into the amphitheater. They still do live performances here.
Do you remember how they talked about the acoustics? I mean, when there's 20,000 people, I forgot how they...
It worked.
Big mouths like me.
No, yeah, you can hear.
It was built, so it was good acoustics. But
Absolutely.
imagine no microphone.
No.
Steve and I were at Ephesus before, and that time we got to tour through there, and we were told, which our group was hard, to stay quiet, because no matter, you could hear the other groups, their guides speaking, no matter where you were. So the guides were being very careful on how loudly they talked to their groups.
Right.
And we were asked not to talk during that. Even whispers you could hear throughout. So the acoustics are unbelievable in that period.
Right. And the upper parts were added by the Romans later, after the Greeks had initially done stuff. So a lot of what we see wasn't, some of it wasn't around when Paul was here. Like I said, there are just layers upon layers upon layers of history here. Now, Ephesus was, as you leave that area, then you get into the public agora, which would have been surrounded by shops. And this is where Paul would have done his preaching in Ephesus, in this agora, this area. And we had a small gathering there. And then from the agora down to the sea, there would have been a road to the port. Now today, what they said, Ephesus is like 2 miles from the sea. So the sea was a little bit higher, it was farther inland, but they still had to dig a canal to get to Ephesus. And part of the reason Ephesus was abandoned is because of earthquakes and such. This canal gradually went away. The water went away, and now you couldn't bring ships and trade through there. It became less important. So as you become less important, just think of a city. I was listening to something about Detroit the other day, how at their height they had millions of people. Now they have 600,000. But the auto industry's declined, for civilization anyway, not in God's eyes. All right. And that was the morning of the 24th. We did stop by a rug store on the way out and saw how Turkish rugs were made and given the opportunity to purchase one. Well, it depended on which size you wanted, right? So some were several $1,000s. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, the larger ones. They're all hand knotted, made either of wool or silk. But for instance, a 5x7 rug may run you, depending on the pattern and everything, and the number of knots per inch, it may run you $4,000 or $5,000. It's
But it might have taken 2 years to make.
yes, and that's a wool rug. If you want silk, way up, because it's very much finer and it's a little harder to yield. They showed us also how silk was taken out of these cocoons and made into threads. That was demonstrated to us. In the afternoon, we went to Patmos. And if you're familiar with your Revelation book, that's where the book of Revelation was written, according to Revelation, on the island of Patmos. You can see there's, I think Jim made this comment to me, how do they know where they're going? There's islands everywhere. And how do you know which one's which as you're sailing around, you know? But they didn't have the GPS back in the day, so it was kind of interesting. You can see our boat down there, or ship, I should say. So this is the area. This is down there is where we went to in that doorway. This is the Cave of the Apocalypse. Where tradition has it, and this is, I did not take this picture, I got it off the interweb, but I saw it. This is where tradition has it that John dictated the book to his scribe, and it was written. And it said that the stories changed from the first time we were here to the second time. We were told that John slept there, that he had a little pillow, a rock that stood up where the little railing's at in the corner, that he used to rest his head there and take naps. And that little silver eye-looking thing is actually a detent in the wall. It said that he would put his hands in there while he stood for hours and prayed and meditated. And they have a small chapel there. And in the cave, what else we have? And
They still have services there.
yeah, they still have services there. All right, that's Patmos. We toured around the town in, what kind of vehicle were we? We were on our bus?
We were on a bus and then we walked.
Yeah, a bus and on foot. Up top, there's a monastery. We did not visit the monastery. And that's another view of the monastery at the highest point of the island. You can see some of the houses. And then here we did walk over to these windmills. These are old windmills, and that's a picture of one. Mykonos had windmills too, but I didn't get pictures of those. So that was Patmos, that was day 8. And we got back on the ship, and in the morning we arrived at Rhodes. And I don't know what you remember of Rhodes. One of the ancient wonders of the world was the Colossus of Rhodes. And it's said to where those arms stick out that, not those ones, that's where his legs would have straddled the harbor. But nobody can prove that. All right. Rhodes is a medieval city. It's the largest medieval city still standing, and it is amazing because there's these medieval walls everywhere you go. Looks like just castle type places everywhere. And there's tons of shops and places to eat and buy things in Rhodes. If you ever get a chance to go, I would go to Rhodes. But we didn't get to go to the beaches. I didn't get to go to the beach. Some did. the beaches nearby, but this is one of the back alley streets. Another picture of one of the marketplaces with the public fountain. Close up of that fountain. This is a monument built, and it's hard to read. Its monument was erected in memory of the Greek Jews that were lost in World War II by the Holocaust. So it's 6 different languages all around telling that. And that's from the top of our ship looking over towards the city. And that was Rhodes. We did get the afternoon off in Rhodes. That was a nice day. Most of us, or at least I know we did, we went and had lunch at one of these places, and I didn't have a picture. I had a large beer served in a glass boot. What? A boot of beer. And the next day, we arrived on Crete. And Crete is the largest of the Greek islands. It is huge. We went to the port of Heraclion, I think is the name of it. And then we all, most of us, piled into a bus and traveled to this place out in the country. It was probably a 30-minute ride or so, 20, 30 minutes. And it was run by, I'll talk about it, and this is just some of the stuff. These are olive trees. And also this is the owner. His grandfather founded this area, and he makes wine, and he makes fire water. Yeah, I call it fire water. They call it Cretan Rocky, but it's not Rocky because traditional Rocky has an anise flavor. This is Cretan Rocky, and there's a whole story behind that. But this is the man. His grandfather founded it. His grandfather left Turkey in about 1912 to 15 time frame. Went to Crete because he was Greek, and a lot of people got kicked out of Turkey then. One of my grandfathers did too.
So not only that, if you were Turkish and you were in Greece, you got kicked out of Greece and had to go back to Turkey. You were Greek and you were in Turkey, you got kicked back to Greece with basically nothing. Think how you would welcome them now. So the place that he has they built up from the ground and very rocky, not the best spot.
Yeah. But here he's showing us some of how the wine ferments, the grapes ferment in the barrels. Stinky. Then we went inside, sat down, had some wine and fire water and some snacks, and we were entertained by Cretan folk dancers. Actually, the lady on the right is his wife, and then
His son.
it's his sons, yeah.
Yeah.
And they did some dancing. Now, I couldn't get the video to work, so this is the ladies and the men doing their kicks and whatever else, but it was quite the treat to see this. Quite the treat. And it was hard to get good pictures because we were all crammed in a little area. And on the way back, you can see these are some of the mountains of Crete. Those are ones that are far in the distance. So it's a very mountainous island. And then we got back into the port city. This is, well, let's see, what is this? The chapel where this picture is the chapel where the Holy Skull of St. Titus, the apostle, is kept. Sounds exciting? Here's the chapel. There's the skull. I mentioned that they usually have remains where these chapels and places of worship are. So that was at Crete, day 10. We stopped in Santorini for the afternoon. These are the cliffs on the westward side of the island. And there's dwellings and shops and such above. How do you get up there? There's a little bit of a hint here. You can walk a trail up there or down. Margie walked down it. Or you could ride donkeys up and down. Or, like we did, we all got in the gondolas and rode the gondolas up. All right. And €10 for the gondola ride. Once we got in, like I said, you see the dwellings up top, and this is a picture from the top. All these islands in the center island, everything, this was all one big island a long time ago, about 3,600 years ago, when there was eruption, a massive eruption during the Minoan period, while the Minoans were occupying the area. And essentially, the top of the island blew off and left all this, and that's why you have that cliff. A lot of that cliff is ash from the eruption, but also the sheerness of it is because of that eruption. You can see all the layers in there.
If you take an aerial picture of Crete, you see the curved crescent look.
Of Santorini? Yeah. Yeah, it looks like a crescent moon.
As a
This,
result of the volcano.
yeah, and this would have been in the middle of it. At the north end is the town of Eos, so none of us went to. And at the south end, there's an archaeological dig called Akrotiri that we didn't go to. That's amazing. We went to it 26 years ago. Okay. So this island was, like I said, the site of one of the largest volcanic eruptions recorded in history, sometimes called Thera eruption. At the height of the Minoan civilization, it left this caldera surrounded by these volcanic ash deposits, hundreds of meters deep. It has been suggested that one theory is this is where the lost civilization of Atlantis was. But the eruption they figured lasted 3 weeks and caused massive tsunami waves. And there's evidence of ash all over I think Europe and places thousands of miles away. Wow. As you walk around Santorini, there's little alleyways and shops and restaurants and churches. And this is a church we went into here. This is actually, looks different, right? You don't see all the pictures on, this is a Catholic church. So Carol and I went in there. This same photo is just the stained glass was on the wall. I thought it looked neat. The shadow of it, whatever. This is another church. This is a Greek Orthodox Church, yes. Newer. We did not, I don't know, we went in there?
Yeah, we did.
We did go in there, but the inside looked like a lot of the other ones we saw. And then we got back on our ship, and it was sundown, sunset. You can't really see it in here, but there was a small crescent moon also above. Day 11, we disembarked the ship and we traveled to Corinth. And on the way to Corinth, you'll see the canal of Corinth that was built in the late 1800s. It was finally completed. It was started before Paul arrived in Corinth. They gave up on it. They finally completed it in the late 1800s, like I said. At sea level, the width is 80.7 feet wide at sea level. It's 4 miles long. And at the deepest place, it's 260 feet deep, from the top to the bottom. Going through this 4 miles would save you, I didn't see that, I wrote it down somewhere, over 400 miles to get around the Peloponnese Peninsula of Greece, the lower part of Greece. So it was a dangerous trip. So this is this 4-mile isthmus. Was very important. Right now, it's impassable by modern commercial ships by and large, and it's a very little economic importance, just mostly tourist attraction. We did see that you see a ship coming through right there up at the top. What would happen if somebody wanted to come the other way? There's no place to pull over, so they have to meter the traffic in, who can go where, when, if you've ever, So, not of biblical importance, but I thought it was interesting. But it kind of paints to the importance of Corinth, having what they did back in the day, they would take the ship from the Ionian Sea on the west side, take the stuff off of it, and there was a road that went over to the east side. They would haul all the stuff and then put it on another ship. So if you want to charge money for people doing that, you could make a lot of money, and you could probably get a lot of people to.
And it's one of 3 in the world when you think of the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, and this canal.
Yeah, so this is ancient Corinth, what has been excavated today. The green squares are a little museum shop area that we entered into, where it says 1 up there, that's the Temple of Apollo. This area here, I believe, is for 5 in the middle, that would be the Agora. There was kind of the seat of government here. I'll talk about the Bema number 4 there. And there was some springs and shops and everything else there. Now, I point this out because this is, we did not get into the area where the theater is and such. That's roped off or fenced off. I point this out because if you look at an overhead map, there's this little teeny area we just saw is what is excavated. From the Acropolis, the highest point, the Acropolis of Corinth, to the sea is 2 miles. And there's a faint line around everything. That's where the wall would have been for the city. So Corinth at its height would have housed, I think I have it written somewhere. 90,000 people. Okay, and in 400 BC, you had 90,000 people. The Romans demolished Corinth in 146 BC, and they built a new city like 100 years later. So it was a brand new city in Paul's day, essentially, right? So it's a new city. Just think of Las Vegas popping up because you have all this commerce going back and forth. A lot of Roman military retirees settled in Corinth, so they had money. If any of you have been in the military men with money like to spend it on
Gambling, booze, and women.
There you go. So there was, just think of it, it was thought of, there was a lot of people with newfound money that didn't have money, you know. But there was also a lot of people that did all the work, and they didn't have money, right? So there was a large disparity in wealth amongst the population during Paul's day. And you should read the book of Corinthians. If you study that, that's some of the tension in the community, that disparity in wealth. All right, so from Corinth, these are some at the museum, some of the statues that they have that they seem to have all lost their heads. heads and arms are usually sculpted separately than the bodies, so they just attach them. This is what's left of the Temple of Apollo. All right. These are some of the oldest columns in Greece. Yeah. So this is built back in the mid-6th century BC to replace a destroyed 7th century predecessor. So this is older than the Parthenon. You could tell by the columns, they're Doric columns. They have just a plain capital, that part in the top. Yeah, I won't get into that. So I don't know if I have a picture of that. No, I don't. So that's what's left of the Temple of Apollo. That would have been the main attraction in the city. This is the Acropolis, the highest point. This is what I talked about on the map, the highest point. And there is a fortress up top there, but we did not go up there. This is the Bema. What is a Bema? No. This is, so this had been a long building on either side of this. I showed on the map. This is the highest area that would have been in the platform. This is where the governor would have been hanging out. And during Paul's stay in Corinth, he was brought for judgment before the proconsul Gallio on the accusation of conducting illegal teachings. All right, so who do you think brought him up?
Jewish authorities.
How'd you know that?
That's usually who gets mad at them, so.
All right, so Gallio said, I'm not going to judge him. It's just a religious dispute. You guys take care of it yourselves. So that's the Bema. This is another picture up top, and another headless statue. Arms also were frequently sculpted separately and attached. Why a lot of them are missing their arms. And this is a street that would have gone off, had shops on either side. And this is the fountain of Pearine. I don't know how to say that. Okay. Another view of that. This would have been one of the shops in Corinth. And inside the museum, there's, I didn't tour the museum a lot, but there's a lot more ruins in there, including these two huge columns with men with folded arms. Bouncers, maybe, you know. Oh, I like that picture. Then we got back in the bus, went down to see the ancient port of that Paul would have sailed in and out of when he went to Corinth. All right. So that's the last thing we did on day 11. We went back to our hotel. On day 12, we departed for home. We went to Athens via Chicago via Vienna on Austrian Air.
Steve, I wanted to give a plug for Margie and all of the pastors and lay ministers. They took passages from the Bible every day, and where we were at, where that Bible reference was, one of those pastors, including our own pastor, Carol, gave a devotion. And that was very meaningful to me, to tie what we were seeing to the Bible. It was wonderful. We
Right.
didn't always do it at a particular time of the day. Sometimes it was on the bus. Sometimes it was literally where we were at.
Right.
Lydia was baptized. Pastor even gave communion on one day. Was that Corinth?
Corinth, the last day we had communion. That finally, there were a lot of forces at play preventing us from having communion, but we did have communion, right, Margie?
We did.
The wine got confiscated.
No, the juice got confiscated.
Well, the juice got confiscated.
We had to find a cup.
We had to find a cup. Anyway, we made it. We got through. We got home. Everyone was safe. And we had a wonderful trip. Any questions at all?
Did you feel safe all the time, or did you?
I did. We felt safe, very safe the whole time. The first time Pastor and I went to Ephesus, we saw people outside the facility with weapons. This, I saw none of that. We didn't see people hanging around with weapons. I felt safe. I didn't feel threatened by anything or anyone. The only kind of conflict I heard of is when we left, we went from the Plaka, which is in Athens, where a lot of the shops and restaurants were that we ended up at, back to our hotel. We had to take a taxi because we were all on our own. And a couple people, the taxi driver refused to take them there. That's the only controversy I heard of. I don't know.
Well, we also saw those, heard the protesters.
Oh, yeah. There were some protesters. When we
Athens.
were in Athens, they would come by, and they happened to be communists, a group, small group, that made a lot of noise, protesting whatever. We don't speak Greek, so I couldn't tell you what they were saying. Anything else that anybody went there wanted to add? Thank you for remembering that. That was good. That's one of the things that I like about going places like this, is hearing the words. And I tried to give a couple of verse readings here to kind of put place to text to Scripture, because when you go and you look at it, you may have had a picture in your mind, but now you have a different picture, more accurate, a better understanding of what was going on at the time, what the land looks like and stuff. I know when we went to the Holy Land, it was the same thing.
My parents, and like when Steve said Corinth was, they said it was like 6% excavated, and we kept telling these young kids, go back in 30 years, like Pastor Carol and Steve did. They saw things differently 30 years later. I mean, it was to think about how much is not excavated. That's what blew me away.
Right. And there's two things, especially in Corinth. There's, as Patsy mentioned, they don't have a lot of money to do all the work, so they have to rely on us to do the work, or other countries. A lot of it is us, our universities and archaeologists. That's part of it. And then the other part is there's people living on a lot of that land right now. So they gotta, do you want to kick somebody out of their homestead just because you want to find some old stuff beneath them, So when we come over there, we can say, hey, look at that old stuff, But it'll take time, and who knows if it ever all gets excavated, because Corinth is different than Ephesus. It's different than Philippi, because those places were abandoned. Corinth was not. To this day, it's not. So.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
And if anybody, I know the camp is looking at doing a trip in January 27 to Egypt. So if you want information, talk to Margie. She's got some.
Or somebody.
I'll be going this January on a planning trip with Elias Tours, so I can hopefully answer more questions than I did. I didn't do a pre one for this Greece trip, but I was kind of lost. But I'll know more about Egypt, so,
We had good guides,
yeah.
very good guides.
Okay, the 7 of us are here. We gotta get a picture of us.
All right, picture.